The Whispering Woods. The night was thick with mist as Emma drove along the winding, narrow road that cut through the Whispering Woods. The locals had warned her about taking this route after dark, but she was in a hurry to get home, and the shortcut through the forest saved her nearly an hour. She dismissed the old tales as nothing more than superstitions. As she drove deeper into the woods, her headlights barely pierced through the fog, and the trees seemed to close in on her. A strange unease settled in the pit of her stomach, but she shook it off. The car's radio fizzled with static, and despite her attempts to tune it, the stations were nothing but distorted noise. Frustrated, she turned it off and focused on the road ahead. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she saw something move. A shadow darted between the trees, quick and unnatural. Emma's heart skipped a beat, but she told herself it was just an animal. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. The road seemed endless, stretching far longer than she remembered. Then, her car sputtered and stalled. The engine died, and the headlights flickered before going out completely. She was enveloped in darkness. The silence was suffocating, only broken by the faint rustling of leaves. Emma tried to restart the car, but it wouldn't turn over. Her breath quickened, and she could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. That's when she heard it. A low whisper, almost too faint to discern. It came from the trees, circling her car, growing louder with each passing second. It was as if the woods themselves were speaking, their voices a collective murmur of the damned. Emma's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, her eyes wide with terror. She forced herself to move, grabbing her phone to call for help, but there was no signal. The whispering grew more insistent, and Emma felt a cold chill run down her spine. She turned her head slowly toward the window, and through the fog, she saw them. Figures moving between the trees, their forms indistinct, yet unmistakably human. Their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, watching her. Panicking, she locked the doors and closed her eyes, trying to convince herself that it was just her imagination. But the whispering continued, now right outside her car. She could hear them, voices overlapping, speaking in a language she didn't understand. Suddenly, there was a loud thud on the roof of the car, followed by the sound of something scraping across the metal. Emma screamed, her eyes snapping open. The whispering stopped, replaced by a deafening silence. She didn't dare move, paralyzed by fear. Then, just as abruptly as it had started, the scraping stopped. The car lights flickered back on, and the engine roared to life. Without thinking, Emma slammed her foot on the gas, the tires screeching as she sped down the road, desperate to escape the nightmare. As she drove, the mist began to clear, and the woods thinned out. Relief washed over her as she saw the lights of the town ahead. She didn't stop until she reached her driveway, shaking as she stumbled out of the car and into the safety of her home. But as she reached for her keys, she felt a sharp sting on the back of her hand. She looked down and saw a deep scratch, fresh and bleeding. Her heart pounded as she slowly turned to look at her car. In the dim light, she saw them, long, deep claw marks etched into the roof, glinting faintly under the porch light. And from the darkness of the woods behind her,